Hello and welcome to Audiobook Connection, behind the scenes with the creative teams. I'm Becky Parker Geist and I'm your host. Audiobook Connection is your place to learn about the audiobook creative process in discussions between the authors, narrators, producers, and post-production teams that bring them all together, as well as guests who have listened to the audiobooks and have questions for the creative teams. This podcast is sponsored by Pro Audio Voices, helping great stories come alive through audiobook production and marketing. Hi, I'm Becky Parker Geist, and I am the host of the Audiobook Connection podcast, Behind the Scenes with the Creative Teams. I'm also president of Bay Area Independent Publishers Association and the CEO and founder of Pro Audio Voices and Amplify Audiobooks, offering audiobook and podcasting production, distribution, and marketing. And I am really happy to be here today with Bonnie Comfort. Bonnie is the author of Staying Married is the Hardest Part, a memoir of passion, secrets, and sacrifice. And we'll learn a lot more about what Bonnie does in her life. But Bonnie, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. I'm really pleased to be here and be talking with you.
Yeah. And you're a therapist. Tell us a little bit more about sort of your background and what, set the scene for us in terms of you coming into the point where you're writing this book.
Okay, well, I am a psychologist and I got my doctorate degree and my license in California and Los Angeles, where I met my husband, Bob Comfort. And that began a 33-year marriage. And in the course of that, there were many changes and ups and downs. And I practiced therapy for maybe the first 10 years we were together, then took a gap year. And then I've been in practice full time as a psychologist working with couples and individuals since then. And Bob died after we'd been together for 33 years. And it was enormous loss for me. And I had already published one novel, and I found writing to be the best therapy for me. So I started writing about my marriage, about the difficulties in it, about how devastated I was about losing him. And I realized that what I was writing after having done couples therapy for so many years was that I have a lot to say to people about weathering the ups and downs of marriage and the value of staying married, even though it's inevitable that there are a lot of ups and downs. So, and then I also had to kind of process the difficult parts of my marriage. And, being a therapist, I found the best way to do it was by talking, writing, and thinking about it.
Yeah. So you really come to this with a depth of understanding, I think, to, not only through your own experience, but also in the experience that you have with other couples going through similar and different, I'm sure, like each situation is quite unique. And your memoir delves deep into your relationship with your husband, Bob. What really inspired you to write it? And then what do you hope that readers will take away from it?
Well, as I was saying, it was somewhat in the beginning therapy for me to write about it. And I wrote about it for a number of years before I began to realize, okay, I have something that is of value to other people to read. It isn't just my personal journal. So,
yeah.
And I have a lot to say, particularly to women, about weathering the ups and downs of a difficult marriage, about finding your voice with your partner, being able to advocate for what you need. Because what I have seen over the years is that women are, in spite of all of the strides we've made in women's employment and visibility in the world, we are still encouraged to be nice, to be pleasing, to be compliant. So all of us kind of have this nurturing, I'll take care of you, I'll sacrifice for you aspect of ourselves. And in order to really have an equal voice in the marriage, you have to get up your courage to be more willing to advocate for yourself. That's one of the things I really wanted to say. And, both partners have to shift in order to accommodate to each other over years. But I think women tend to do all of the emotional labor in a relationship. And it's really important to be able to ask your partner to join you in that, to think about things, maybe to go to couples therapy, maybe not. I know most men would prefer not to. And their least favorite phrase from a wife is, I need to talk to you about something.
Right. And, as a therapist and psychologist, how did your professional background shape your understanding of marriage and the struggles that you were going through personally?
Well, I think I was much more empathic than I might have been if I had not been a therapist. And, my husband was a challenge in some ways to me because we had some sexual incompatibilities. And there were times when he really shut down sexually, and it went on for months. And if I had not been a therapist, I've not been a psychologist, I might have been more critical of him. I might have been more demanding than I was, but I understood it. And he was also very able to explain to me that it wasn't that he didn't find me attractive or love me. It was simply that he was too depressed to deal with it. So I understood depression. I understood, and I made allowances for him in ways I might not have if I hadn't been a psychologist.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. And so I'm curious then, as you, in making those allowances, did that feel to you like you were being able to be more supportive of him, but was that at your own expense? I'm sort of curious about that balance of, as you were saying before, we women, tend to want to make everything right? We have a tendency to give and provide the support, make the allowances, and that speaking up for ourselves tends to be the harder thing. I don't know if is that also, I'm changing the question, but I'm wondering if that's also true for men. Is it hard for them to feel like they can speak up for what they need, or is generally they're pretty good at that?
Oh, I think each person is an individual and has varying ability to do that. Mm-hmm. And there's no question that there's plenty of men who feel they shouldn't have to ask for some things. And for example, in bed, feel like they ought to know what to do with the woman and therefore don't ask when it would be much better if they did. And I think that it depends how much power each person has in the relationship, how easy it is to ask for what you need, because the person, and that shifts over time. In fact, many factors influence whether you feel like an equal to your partner, whether you feel a little bit one down because one is making more money or one is more successful or one is more talented in some way. And so that affects your ability to ask for what you need. But I think it's so important for a couple to be able to approach a conversation with curiosity and with goodwill. I've told many couples, assume, even if you're angry, even if you feel like this person has, snapped at you and is being obnoxious, keep in mind that your partner actually is acting out of perhaps some old story or some wound, but they have goodwill towards you. Assume goodwill.
Yeah. So those power dynamics that those shifts that can happen, I imagine they can be pretty subtle at times. And so how can people recognize those changes, and especially in relation to your own marriage? Like, what were you observing in terms of those kinds of shifts of control and power dynamics?
Well, when I first married Bob, I was completely dazzled by him. I mean, I was a psychologist. I had plenty going on for myself, but he was a successful television and screenwriter. He was incredibly talented, incredibly funny, and very charismatic. And I just couldn't get over it. It took me years to get over that feeling of, oh my God, how did I get so fortunate to marry you? And that's when you say that in your own head, oh my God, I can't believe you married me. you don't feel like an equal. And that's a way you know. If you feel like your partner has more respect in the world, makes more money, is more self-confident than you are, it's something you need to work on. It is something you need to do to say, okay, well, I'm going to increase what I think of myself. And the ways to increase your opinion about yourself have to do with building your self-esteem by making choices that you feel proud of, doing the kind of work that leads to an accomplishment you feel good about, even if it is staying home and raising your child, feeling good about being a good parent. Those things lift your self-esteem and leave you more able to feel like an equal with your partner. So yes, I started that way, but eventually we did even out. Mm-hmm. I mean, I think he felt more respect for me, and I also felt more respect for myself over events that happened over time.
Yeah, it seems like just in my own experience that when there is more like the different ways in which one person may be powerful, I almost hesitate to use that word, or to be maybe in higher esteem in our own minds or in the other's minds, that there are many different arenas in which one might be higher than the other, and so to sort of help balance out and to remember the parts of ourselves that are those strong, the good parts. Yeah.
Well said, because people have different talents, and
right.
You might be an amazing athlete in some way, and your partner may not, or your partner may be gifted in some other way, and so you can balance it out in your own mind, which is very helpful.
Yeah. Recognizing the your own gifts as well as the other person's gifts, and yeah, that's cool. So in your book, you explore some of the natural rhythms of intimacy in long-term relationships. Could you talk a little bit more about that concept and why it's important?
Well, I think it's important for us to take the long view of a relationship. And in a long view, there are natural ebbs and flows of closeness or distance, depending on what's going on. For example, if you have a child, if a woman has a child, she may be completely preoccupied in that first year, first with the pregnancy, then with the delivery, then nursing and looking after the baby. And the husband may feel, less important then. And it's important in that situation for him to take the longer view. Yes, she's totally preoccupied with our child now, but I know it will change over time. And also, there's resentments that build up, and you have to attend to resentments, because otherwise that creates distance. So recognizing that you're resenting something requires getting up your courage to say it in a way that is curious, that communicates that, you're not, like, for example, the shared labor of the household. That's often a source of conflict between a husband and a wife, or a couple, whatever, it's gay or straight, but it's a source of conflict. Who's going to do what?
Yeah.
And so being able to have a conversation that's constructive, that expresses love and curiosity, is a way to navigate those kind of issues that may, if not dealt with, lead to resentment and distance.
Right. Yeah, that can be, that does seem like a point that is often really challenging for couples, is to be able, especially if your communication style with each other, or just, the ways in which you communicate are not easy. If there's something that makes that harder, it seems like then easy for resentments to build up, and for that, the asking in a curious way, which I love the way you use that word, asking with curiosity, which is not an emotion charged.
Exactly.
Feeling or experience,
Yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting. And since we're talking about intimacy, sexual confidence, that can be a real challenge for many women. What advice do you have for those women who are trying to overcome their insecurities, trying to find that balance of power for themselves, especially in that, intimate aspect of the relationship?
Unfortunately, I think that sexuality and body image and body shape and appearance is a funnel through which women focus on whether they are of any ultimate value. There's so much emphasis in our culture placed on this. How thin am I? What shape am I? How's my hair look today? Any of that. And so I think it's important, particularly for women, to learn to appreciate the enormous gift of having a body that is functional, having a healthy body, and to work at accepting that our ideas about how we're supposed to look are crafted by huge corporations that want to sell things to us.
Right. Yeah. Absolutely.
It really is helpful to be reminded of that the vast majority of people in the world don't look like those ones in the commercials and print ads, and how we are is acceptable. It's really acceptable, and to embrace the gift of being able to see, being able to hear, and speak and walk, all of that. So I think there's that. I think that a lot of sexual shame is taught depending on the upbringing you've had, and you have to work at divesting yourself of that. And I also think that men have sexual shame too. They feel entirely dependent on their equipment working properly and staying up. And if it isn't, they feel shame about it. They feel inadequate. It's so important, particularly in a long relationship, to be able to make allowances to say, well, you can't orgasm this way anymore, or, you're having trouble keeping it up, and it's fine. Let's work around it. Let's cuddle. Let's caress. Let's give ourselves whatever kind of physical pleasure we can. And I think for women, I've seen women who have been married for 15 or 20 years and have never had an orgasm, and never had an orgasm with their husband. And I think those women need to educate themselves. There's plenty of literature out there, plenty of places to go to find information. They're just, to some extent, lacking information.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But it takes work, and it takes intention and being kind to yourself.
Yeah. A lot of people, I think, fear disappointing their partners.
Yes.
Yes. So even at the cost of their own happiness.
And they're done that.
Yeah. So how can women kind of set and maintain those healthy boundaries while they're trying to overcome that fear?
I think you have to challenge yourself to believe that you have the right to physical pleasure with a partner. You have a right to reach an orgasm. You have a right to have it the way you like it, and to ask for that. And I do think it helps to read things like, for example, Julian Anderson has a book out this year called Want, and it's an anonymous collection of sexual fantasies that women have written in and confessed that they have. And, everybody has a secret masturbation fantasy that is their go-to way of reaching orgasm when they're alone. And maybe you want to share it with your partner, maybe you don't. But important thing is that you normalize it in your own head. Everybody's thinking really crazy shit in their head.
Well, bringing it back around to writing.
Yeah.
So you are an experienced writer. Your novel, Denial, sold over 100,000 copies. How did writing a memoir differ from writing fiction?
Oh, it was very different, very different. I mean, I wrote Denial in 2 years. It was fun. It was just a flight of fantasy. Maybe I'll do this. Maybe I'll do this. And I didn't feel exposed anyway. I used my professional knowledge in writing Denial as well, but writing a memoir requires unzipping your chest and showing your beating heart. Very different. So, I mean, it took me a long time after writing all of this stuff to process my marriage that I got to the point of saying, okay, I'm going to figure out what of those 2,500 pages I wrote, because it was that, which 300 I can choose to, and I'm going to write a memoir. And then I'm in a memoir group because my publisher has offered that to us. And most of the memoirs feel very vulnerable compared to people writing fiction, because you are revealing aspects of yourself. You're leaving yourself open to criticism or other people's opinions about the choices you've made and who you are and who do you think you are to write about yourself. Why do you think your life's important enough to write about anyway? Or I don't want to read another miserable child abuse story. Let me go on to the next one. So there's so many challenges to writing a memoir as opposed to fiction.
Yeah. Would you say that level of vulnerability is the biggest challenge in that process?
That, and also, I don't have this in my situation, but the other memoirists who have family members or, ex-partners or children who they are very concerned will react to the material in the book is a huge problem.
Yeah.
Huge challenge.
Yeah. I hadn't have an ex-husband who negatively reacted to the novel I wrote because he was assuming I was writing about him. I was like, no, used some material, but no, it wasn't you. So a memoir would be a whole other.
Yes, I did. I also had that when I wrote Denial and it came out. I had fashioned one character slightly like a person that I knew.
Yeah.
And he would call me, they're going to know it's me. And I said, there's nothing about this that shows this is you. So he talked about it, but yeah.
Yeah. So I know, writing, personal storytelling, memoir often leads to a lot of self-discovery. Was there something that you felt like you learned about yourself in the process of writing this book?
Yes. And unfortunately, it was after Bob died, which was really a shame because I had been angry with him for years about him pressuring me sometimes to engage in sexual activities I didn't want. And I saw that as his problem and I was upset about it. And we had, this chronic issue. And one of his strategies for dealing with me complaining that we weren't having enough sex was he had said to me, look, I'm doing the best I can. Why don't you just go out and get it somewhere else and don't tell me about it? And don't do it with any of my friends. Well, I said to him, that's not a solution. I know better. That is not a solution to a marital problem or a sexual problem. No, I'm not going to do it. But after 2 or 3 years of this, I did. Finally said, fine. I'm all fine. I'll have affairs because, you keep saying this over and you won't go to sex therapy with me or therapy at all. So I had a bunch of affairs. And then at some point he said to me, okay, well, did you ever have any affairs? And I said, I don't want to discuss it with you. And he said, oh, so you have then. And then I was fourth. And he said to me, tell me, he said, I won't be angry with you. I told you to do it. I won't be angry with you. I'm interested to hear it. It'll turn me on. So I believed him at that moment and I told him everything. And within hours, he was focused and became obsessed with wanting to see me with another man. And that became a new, deeper level of sexual conflict between us. It never occurred to me all this time, all those years afterwards, that he really was angry, that he really was profoundly hurt when I told him about my infidelities. And he felt that he couldn't say it because he had told me to do it. And it had tripped in his mind into, I'm going to turn this around. This is great for me. This is exciting. But there was a kind of edge to his requests after that. There was a bit of an anger, and I didn't realize I was at fault. Whether I should have had the affairs or not, one thing, I never should have told him. I never should have assumed that because he'd given me permission, that it meant he wouldn't be terribly hurt by it, trapped by it, and then become obsessed with it.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. Well, I am talking with Bonnie Comfort, author of Staying Married is the Hardest Part, a memoir of passion, secrets, and sacrifice. Bonnie, let's take just a short pause and we'll come back and talk about the audiobook version of your book. Get your copy today of the audiobook Staying Married is the Hardest Part, a memoir of passion, secrets, and sacrifice by Bonnie Comfort, narrated by Amy Gorlow. Can a loving relationship endure career setbacks, infidelities, and mismatched sexual desires? This is the question psychologist Bonnie Comfort grapples with as she navigates her unpredictable 30-year marriage to Hollywood screenwriter Bob, while she provides marital therapy to others. Bob is affectionate, brilliant, and hilarious, but his sexual desires are incompatible with Bonnie's. Despite her misgivings, she indulges his kinks, which often include photographing her in lingerie. For a while, their life in Los Angeles is exciting. Eventually, however, Bob's growing career frustrations lead to his complete sexual shutdown. Tensions rise, and Bob suggests Bonnie have discreet affairs and not tell him. She does just that. But when she confesses her infidelities 5 years later, his sexual demands become more extreme. When she complies, Bonnie feels shame. When she refuses, as she increasingly does, their fights threaten to tear their marriage apart. With remarkable honesty, Bonnie recounts the passionate highs and lows of her marriage, culminating in Bob's death. As she grieves, she reflects on her own role in their struggles and offers profound insights from her personal and professional experiences. Her story lays bare the complexities of love, the ongoing challenges women face in intimate relationships, and how even the most difficult marriages can find a way to thrive. Get your copy today on Amplify Audiobooks. So, coming back to your book, Staying Married is the Hardest Part, we're currently engaged in the production process. What would you say is the most surprising thing or something that you weren't expecting about the process or anything that you just felt like, you'd like to share with our listeners? Because many of our listeners are authors themselves and maybe are at the beginning of or just thinking about the audiobook process. I like to give them some different experiences that people have had. And so tell us a little bit about yours.
Well, I had originally thought maybe I can narrate my own memoir. And I tried it alone on my phone for 5 minutes. And within 5 minutes, my voice was hoarse. And I thought, okay, I'm not going to be able to do this. But I also listened to my voice and I thought, that's really not the voice that sounds so great to me for this book and this material. So I talked to you and you said, well, I think I can find somebody who will be the kind of voice you want. And you sent me 5 audition samples of 5 different people reading the same passage from my book. And first of all, I was amazed at how good every single one of them was. I was impressed. And there was one that was just better than the others, and I chose her. And then when I had an interview with her, because you set that up for me, I really liked her, and I really liked her voice, and I thought she was a really good fit for me. And I'm in the process now of listening to it so that I can make whatever tiny corrections are needed. And I think I made a great choice with her. I think she's terrific. I'm really happy with the results. That's one thing. The only other thing that surprised me I thought, I don't know about this, is trying to pick music for it, for introductory music, because of the problem of copyright. You have a contract with a company that will allow you to use
licensed
copyright. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But I couldn't find anything on it I liked. I didn't like any of it. And so now I'm thinking, I think I won't have any music. I think there's a lot of books that don't have any music at the beginning.
Yeah, and totally fine. And that's cool that you are experiencing that trying to find the right music, and maybe the right music is no music, which is definitely an option. And a lot of audiobooks have no music at all.
I don't remember if there is at the beginning, it didn't register.
Yeah.
So,
and for our listeners, Amy Gorlow is narrating Staying Married is the Hardest Part. And she's just doing a great job.
She's just terrific.
Yeah. Yes. And then what's your aspiration with your book, your audiobook, and going forward? Let's just start there.
What do I want to have happen with this?
Yeah. Yes. Thank you.
Well, I'm hoping. I'm doing everything I possibly can to create awareness of it out in the world, because if nobody knows about your book, nobody can possibly buy it, read it, listen to it. So I'm working very hard at marketing and PR, and I'm going to have 2 different launch events because I lived half of my life in LA and half of my life in Portland. So I'm going to have one here and one in LA. And I'm hoping that the people love it and communicate with me about it. And I've started a conversation that's worth having.
Yeah, great. And would you share with our listeners what your website is so that they can find out more about all the things that you're doing?
Absolutely. It's an easy one. It's bonniecomfort.com. Just my name without any other initials or periods in it, just bonniecomfort.com. And I'm also on Instagram and Facebook as Bonnie Comfort Author.
Great. And I'm excited to share that your audiobook will, by the time that this episode releases, that it will be available on Amplify Audiobooks. And also to share both with you, Bonnie, and with our listeners, a little excitement about what's coming up with our next version of Amplify Audiobooks. Is it will be a platform where you can actually communicate with each other, author and listeners, and really to build community on that platform. So a lot of exciting things to come, and we always encourage our listeners to get their audiobooks on Amplify Audiobooks. It is the equitable audiobook platform where we're helping authors succeed and thrive.
Wonderful. Yeah. That is exciting.
Yeah. Okay. Anything else that you would like to share that I didn't even think to ask you?
Well, I do want to say I had no idea how widely distributed audiobooks are that you have produced and that are available on your platform and all the other platforms. I had no idea. I thought it was Amazon, Apple Books, and one more, and that was it. So that's been a huge education for me, and it's exciting. It's exciting. Yeah.
Yeah. It gets out to over 60 different channels, retail and library, as well as on Amplify Audiobooks. Yeah.
Including Amazon and Apple.
Including them. Yes, that's right.
Spotify.
Well, my philosophy is be in all the places where people might be looking for you, and then you're more likely to get found.
Wonderful. Yeah. So happy about that.
Well, thank you, Bonnie. This again, Bonnie Comfort, author of Staying Married is the Hardest Part, a memoir of passion, secrets, and sacrifice. Again, thanks for being with me.
Thank you so much, Becky. It's been a pleasure.
Thanks for joining us for Audiobook Connection, behind the scenes with the creative teams. Please take a moment to subscribe at audiobookconnection.com. The podcast is sponsored by Pro Audio Voices, helping great stories come alive through audiobook production and marketing. Learn more at proaudiovoices.com. Again, thanks for being with us, and please join us next week.